Long Lartin Prison was opened in 1971 and is located in Worcestershire. It houses some of the worst prisoners in the UK. Today we look at the most notorious former and current inmates. 1. Stephen Wright. 65-year-old Stephen Wright was previously in the Navy and then was a lorry driver and barman. He had a small criminal record. He had gambling and alcohol addictions and was charged with theft in 2001. From 2006 in Ipswich, a series of murders took place. 25-year-old Gemma Adams was found on the 2nd of December 2006. 6 days later, Tanya Nichols was found, who was a friend of Gemma Adams. On the 10th of December, 24-year-old Annalie Alderton, who was pregnant, was found. On the 12th of December, 2 more women were found, 24-year-old Paula Clennell and 29-year-old Annette Nichols. The police linked the murders and a huge investigation was launched. At a press conference, the police issued a warning to the public saying not to work on the streets while they hunt for the killer or killers. Around 200 police officers were involved in the investigation, and they were receiving over 200 calls a day. On the 18th of December, they arrested a 37-year-old man on suspicion, but no more inquiries were needed and he was let go. On the 19th of December, the police announced they arrested their second suspect, 48-year-old Stephen Wright. The police went through CCTV and made many interviews with women in the same trade. They followed tips they were receiving from the many phone calls from the public. The breakthrough came when the DNA linked back to Stephen Wright, who was on the police database for the theft he committed in 2001, his one previous conviction. He was charged with all 5 murders on the 20th of December. At his trial, Stephen Wright pleaded not guilty. The main evidence was DNA. He was linked via DNA evidence to 3 of the victims, and to the 2 other victims he was linked by fibre evidence. Just to note, during the trial, prosecutor Peter Wright suggested that Stephen Wright may not have acted alone, as the remains of one of the victims was found some distance from the road, but there was no evidence that her body had been dragged by one person. On the 21st of February 2008, Stephen Wright was convicted of 5 counts of murder and given a whole life tariff. He will never be released from prison. The police reopened and re-examined 4 cold cases to establish whether Wright could be responsible and questioned Wright about them, but currently the investigation is still ongoing. The 65-year-old still remains in Long Lartin Prison. 2. Charlie Cray. When Charlie Cray was 6, his mother had 2 identical twins, Ronnie and Reggie Cray, who you probably know. Like the Cray twins, older brother Charlie was brought up on the streets and did amateur boxing. He actually boxed for the Navy, but was discharged due to migraines. Charlie Cray didn't have an aggressive reputation like his younger brothers, but he was part of the family's criminal enterprise. When his brothers were being investigated, so was he. He was released from prison in 1975 after serving 7 years. But he was sentenced again in 1997 for conspiracy to smuggle £39 million worth of cocaine into the country. He was charged in an undercover drug sting. He served his time at Long Lartin Prison. Shortly after this, in 2000, Charlie Cray died from heart complications at the age of 72. Surviving brother Reggie was allowed out of prison to attend Charlie's funeral. 3. Jake Fari. Jake Fari had a criminal history of robbery and assault. In 2004, he was given a 9-month referral order for gang robbery of a schoolboy in Greater London. In 2005, he was given 12 months supervision for a robbery of an adult in London, and then in 2006 he was given an 18-month supervision order for an unprovoked assault on a girl in the street and a burglary in London. Jimmy Misen's family had run-ins with Fari previously. He had punched Jimmy's younger brother Harry and demanded money. The parents of the Misen boys told the school that Jake Fari attended. There was another incident between Jimmy's younger brother Harry and Jake Fari. Fari saw Harry and asked him why he was a grass. He then threatened him and punched him in the chest. The police visited Fari's home on the 7th of May 2003 and gave him a harassment warning. This led to a devastating crime. On May 10th, Jimmy and his younger brother Harry were in a bakery in South London. It was the day after Jimmy's 16th birthday. Jake Fari, 19 years old, entered the bakery and an altercation began when Jimmy stood up to the threats being made against him and his younger brother Harry. Jake Fari offered Jimmy to go outside, but Jimmy refused. This enraged Jake Fari. Fari hit Jimmy with 2 plastic bottles and a fight started. The brothers defended themselves and they all fell into a cake cabinet before Fari was thrown out of the bakery. Fari then re-entered with an advertisement sign and started attacking Jimmy. Jimmy continued defending himself. That's when Jake Fari reached for a 12-inch hot glass dish from the counter and threw it at Jimmy. Jimmy staggered at the rear of the bakery and into a cupboard to shield himself from the possibility of Jake Fari returning, where his elder brother Tommy, who was 27 at the time, found him. Jimmy collapsed in his older brother's arms and was so afraid of the attack that when his brother tried to open the cupboard door, he held it closed, thinking it was Fari. Unfortunately, Jimmy passed away. Witnesses said Jake Fari left the bakery with a smug grin on his face. Fari handed himself into the police custody 3 days after the attack. He told police, "Someone has died because of me. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean to kill him." On the 11th of March 2009, the trial began. Fari admitted to throwing the glass, but not of the murder. Fari was sentenced to life imprisonment with a min term of 14 years. He served his time at Long Lartin Prison, and on November 2nd, 2009, Fari was stabbed by Sean Mercer, the murderer of Reece Jones, while in prison. Fari was taken to hospital and survived the attack. Fari served 14 years at Long Lartin Prison and was granted parole in May of this year. The parole board stating, "We can confirm that a panel of the parole board has directed the release of Jake Fari following a hearing." 4. Jordan Mcweeny. Mcweeny had a history of violence and abuse, and a restraining order was taken out against him in 2021. Mcweeny had been convicted 28 times for 69 earlier offences, including 9 separate spells in prison. On June 26, 2022, Zara Alina was walking home in London when she was essayed and had her life taken away. She was discovered on a driveway. Mcweeny had been thrown out of a bar for harassing staff and had subsequently approached several other women, but he came across the path of Zara. It was soon found out that the murder of Zara occurred 9 days after Mcweeny was released from prison on licence. Concern had been raised on the 22nd of June, 4 days before the murder, after Mcweeny failed to show up for 2 appointments. 2 days later, the Met Police attempted to arrest him, but he was not at the address on their records. The probation services said being unable to access Mcweeny was down to a lack of staff. In December 2023, Jordan Mcweeny, who refused to attend his trial, was handed a life sentence with a min term of 38 years before consideration, which he serves at Long Lartin Prison. Mcweeny appealed his conviction last month, but walked out halfway through and said he had had enough. His sentence still stands and he remains in Long Lartin Prison. 5. Carl Dobson. 40-year-old Carl Dobson was an MC in the grime scene. He was known as Crazy Titch. In the underground scene of grime music, he was very well known. He worked with various others in the field and featured in films. Dwayne Mahorn, known as Dirty Goods, is his half-brother and is also an MC in the grime scene. In November 2005, Dobson and his stepdad Anthony Green were sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of 21-year-old Richard Holmes. in joint enterprise laws. Despite the judge acknowledging that he was not the actual murderer, he was given a min term of 30 years. His half-brother Dwayne was acquitted and released a mixtape, Letter to Titch. While incarcerated, Dobson released a second mixtape in 2010. In 2017, Titch appeared in an interlude on Stormzy's album, and in 2020, a lyric video called Voldemort was released on YouTube with new audio from him. Titch's family launched Justice for Titch petition after calls for him to give a retrial after they claim a combination of injustices happened. Titch himself said, "There was things I was asking that wasn't happening that could easily prove my innocence or disprove some lies that was being told in court." Titch himself revealed that his solicitors were shut down by the Law Society just weeks before his trial. On Titch's petition, they state the reasons for a retrial being, "We believe that the conviction came about because of a combination of injustices, character assassination, unreliability of eyewitness evidence, failings in representation. The evidence in this case is unsafe and must be challenged again. An eyewitness failed to pick Titch out on an identification parade, but 6 months later the same witness attended another parade and picked him out. He then admitted that he had seen a photograph of Titch." Titch's family saying, "Everyone deserves a fair trial." For more information, please visit change.org Justice for Titch. He currently still remains in Long Lartin Prison. I'm now going to briefly touch on other notable inmates who have served or are still serving at Long Lartin Prison. Ben Geen. Ben Geen was a nurse at Horton General Hospital in Oxfordshire between 2003 and 2004. He was charged with taking the lives of 2 people and grievous bodily harm of 15 other people. He would inject his patients with lethal doses. It is thought that the number of victims is between 12 and 15. He was convicted of life imprisonment with a min term of 30 years. His latest appeal was in 2020 and it was rejected. The 43-year-old remains in Long Lartin Prison and still proclaims his innocence. Vincent Tabak. In October 2011, Vincent Tabak was sentenced to life imprisonment with a min term of 20 years for the murder of Joanna Yates and 10 months for indecent images. He lived in the same building as Joanna but had no affiliation before. He took her life. The 45-year-old remains in Long Lartin Prison. Sidonio Teixeira was given a life sentence for taking the life of his 3-year-old daughter in 2008. He'd served his time in Long Lartin, but in 2016 his life was also taken by a fellow inmate when he was beaten. This inmate was also serving a life sentence for a double murder. 2 other notable inmates who served some time at Long Lartin are Charles Bronson and Ian Watkins, the lead singer of Lost Prophets, who I covered previously. Thanks for watching. Until next time.